And now, by the forbearance of the ranking member, I'm going to recognize our friend from Louisiana, Mr. Higgins.
I thank the chairman. Mr. Chairman, I personally strongly advise young Americans, I speak to all the time before Congress and as a cop, it's a part of the narrative of our country regarding marijuana and its impact. I personally strongly advise young Americans to refrain from even the limited use of modern, super high THC marijuana in any form. It's just too powerful. I've seen scientific analysis showing THC levels as much as 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 times the average THC level from marijuana of the 70s. It's just not your grandfather's weed anymore. However, that being stated, I'm a constitutionalist, and I support the freedom of individual Americans to determine their best course of action for medical treatment. So I'm publicly have supported for years the Veteran Administration's access to prescribed medical marijuana for our veterans. So, Mr. Gopal, I'm going to move to you in a second because, Mr. Chairman, you are a constitutionalist scholar, and we discussed before, you know, we face a very real constitutional quandary in America. We have federal restrictions of marijuana. It's a Schedule I drug, and yet we have our sovereign states have legalized marijuana, decriminalized it to some level across the country. We can just not continue to ignore the fact that we have to address this constitutionally. And personally, I think it could be a very good idea, certainly be subject for debate, perhaps in the 118th Congress, perhaps in this committee, to talk about rescheduling marijuana to Schedule III or even IV. But from Mr. Gopal, I'm particularly concerned about my veteran brothers and sisters having access to whatever medicine that they determine is best to treat their condition, whether it's pain management or PTSD, you know, whatever the case may be. Marijuana is currently a Schedule I controlled substance. So just to clarify for America, it's currently unavailable to veterans through VA health facilities. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, VA doctors or in positions being federal employees are barred from discussing, well, they can discuss, but they cannot do anything for more than discuss
exactly.
Cannabis.
Thank you for clarifying that. So, but there are clearly potential benefits of medical marijuana for veterans. Again, we're not talking about high school children. We're not talking about young Americans in college that want to experiment and party. I completely discourage that behavior. We're talking about mature veteran men and women who have some form of service-related condition that they need to treat. And clearly there are potential benefits for medical marijuana for veterans who are suffering chronic conditions. Would you address, Mr. Gopal, like what happens in the real world on the street when a veteran figures out that it may be his best course of action to use marijuana medically to treat his condition, but he cannot access it from the VA legally? How's that veteran get his dope?
So it depends on their state of residence. I mean, if they are in one of the 150 million Americans in a legal state, then there's a process by which adults can purchase THC products. Pretty much every veteran has access to CBD.
Right, but technically that puts them in violation of federal law,
Yes,
which brings us back to the constitutional quandary that we must address in this body, and I look forward to working with my colleagues across the aisle. It might be the one thing we can completely agree on. I've been advised that the States Reform Act protects states' rights, protects vets, regulates labeling for potency concentration. So having been a spokesman for my colleagues there, let me not forget to introduce on behalf of my colleague, Representative Biggs, if I may, for the record, Mr. Chairman, a statement by an organization called Smart Approaches to Marijuana.
Without any objection at all.
So, Mr. Gopal, in my final 15 seconds here, do you have a word for America regarding what Congress should do for marijuana as it regards our veterans? Go.
I would say that because veterans are in that special quandary, being a population that receives federal health care, there is no other option other than descheduling, because without descheduling, you are still criminalizing some forms of possession and denying veterans the access that they need.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank all the panelists. I very much appreciate you being here. I yield, Mr. Chairman.